I'm gonna get in where I fit in. So,
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Pickleton Bacon Show Rewind. I am Pickles, and that over there is.
oh, she means me, bacon.
Alright, and Bacon, tell them what we're doing today.
We are doing, as you can see by her photo, we're doing the Hobbit Battle of the Five Armies.
Yes, what do you know about the Five Armies?
I know that it's prequel to Lord of the Rings. I also know Luke Evans is in it. I also know that it's one of the better um films of the Hobbit saga. And I do believe that this is where they no wait, I think that's the second one. I should say I think this is where they fight the dragon, but that's the second one.
No, this is where they fight the dragon. I think this one is where they fight the dragon. Anyways, give me just a second there. There you go. Okay.
Why did you
Um,
switch me to the host?
no, I got it. I fixed it. I was trying to change your name and I changed the our name, so there we go. All right, so let's take a look at Wikipedia and see what we can find about the Five Armies. Give me a second. All right, so The Hobbit: The Battle of the Five Armies is a 2014 epic high fantasy adventure film directed by Peter Jackson from a screenplay by Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens, Peter Jackson, and Guillermo del Toro. It is based on the 1937 novel The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. It is the sequel to 2013's The Hobbit: The Desolation of Smaug, as well as the final installment in the Hobbit trilogy, acting as the prequel to Jackson's The Lord of the Rings trilogy. The film's story concludes the adventure of the titular Hobbit Bilbo Baggins and Thorin Oakenshield's company of dwarves who take possession of the treasure within the Lonely Mountain as factions of dwarves, elves, and man clash over it, while the orc Azog the Defiler and his forces make their move upon them. The film also stars Martin Freeman. I think he's playing Bilbo Baggins. Ian McKellen, Richard Armitage, Evangeline Lilly, Luke Evans, Lee Pace, Benedict Cumberbatch, Ken Stott, Aidan Turner, Dean O'Gorman, Billy Connolly, Graham McTavish, James Nesbitt, Stephen Fry, Ryan Gage. And the ensemble cast also features Kate Blanchett, Ian Holm, Hugo Weaving, and Orlando Bloom. It was Holm's final film before his death in 2020, as well as Lee's final live action role, although he would be featured as a voice actor in several films released after he died in 2015. The Hobbit: The Battle of the Five Armies premiered in London on December the 1st, 2014, and was released on December 11th in New Zealand and on December 17th in the United States by Warner Brothers. And the film received mixed reviews from critics and grossed 962.2 million worldwide, making it the second highest grossing film of 2014. It received numerous accolades, including being nominated for Best Sound Editing at the 87th Academy Awards. Y'all, like, seriously, that was the best thing. So, like, before we get into, like, exactly what happened, do you have any, like, particular scenes that stand out from this movie?
There are a couple. The first one that I like is at the end when Bilbo is coming back home after everything's been said and done, and all his family are taking his stuff out of his house.
Yeah, that part's funny. I like the part where I think it's like at the end of the movie where Tariel, the female elf, um, she's laying with the dwarf that she had fallen in love with, and I think he's already dead at this point, and she says to Lee Pace, he's playing Fandral, why does it hurt so much? And he says because it's real, because it was real, and I guess that was meaning love or whatever. It's kind of hard though. One thing that I did notice about this movie before we get into it is that there's only certain like I didn't really catch all the characters' names apart from a few people, so I really don't know what their names are. It's not as clear or as apparent as it was in like the Lord of the Rings and like the Fellowship and all of that. So that's something that I keep noticing off the bat. And it cracks me up how they had Luke Evans and Orlando Bloom in the same shot, and these two, like, you could swear they're cousins or like related in some way.
To be honest with you, I thought they were brothers at first. Like the way that they looked, I thought they were brothers. Now hold on, because I'm trying to see what this white truck is doing. There's a white truck parked outside. Trying to see what he's doing. Like it's just parked there. Like, he's been there for the last like 5 minutes since we started.
Oh, do you want to let's say I'll stop and you can like go and investigate.
Hey,
Hold
I'm
on, I'm
I'm
gonna
watching out the
pause.
window.
All right, and we're back. All right. So, is there anything else that you remember, or like any particular scene that you remember before we start?
Just the one that I told you.
All right. So, obviously, the movie starts where we had left off in the Desolation of Smaug. Um, Smaug is the dragon. He is gonna terrorize the city. Um, Bard is played by Luke Evans, by the way, and him and his people are running around. Um, the sleazy mayor and his lackeys are escaping. Um,
Sounds familiar? Texas?
exactly, Texas. And so now, as you know, there's this like commotion going around. You see Tahariel, the female elf, is gonna escape, and Smog is flying over. He's gonna antagonize everyone. You know, I'm a little bit confused as to why they had the death of Smog in this film when it should have been like they could have shelled out the last 30 the first 15-20 minutes of this film could have been the last 15 minutes of the last film, but I digest. Um,
Exactly.
so Bard is in jail and he sees the dragon coming and flying over. And Tariel is still in the house with Killy and the other dwarves. And she's getting everyone on the boat to get to leave because Smog is flying over the city, blowing fire at everyone. He's done. He hates life, like same. He's setting the city on fire. By the way, the voice of Smog and the Necromancer is Benedict Cumberbatch. So that's why I was like, Benedict, hello, sir. Where are you? Did the creepy car leave?
It's still out there. Still, it's just a truck. It's parked out there. I might have to call the popo here in a minute.
Okay. Anyways, Bard breaks out of jail and finds the bow and arrow set because you know how randomly you just break out of jail and there's weapons around because anyways
Because plot placement
exactly
or prop placement. Excuse me.
and then he gets on the roof and he starts running to on the rooftops, which I feel like okay, all of these I was like all of these roofs apparently have straight lines for you to run on and there's no like curvatures. I don't know how that works. And now the dwarves are on top of the mountain. So now we go to a cutaway shot to the dwarves on the mountain. They're all waiting scared, while they see Smog after they done pissed him off, decimating the city that they just came from and that they try to help and everything, right? So now Bard is sliding down the roof of one of the houses and he's trying to get to the tower because he has that black arrow or whatever because he's going to try to kill Smog. And then he finally makes it to the bell tower and starts shooting at Smog like these little cardboard arrows. I'm like, dude, are you fucking serious right now? Smog could just incinerate like that whole thing and be done, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, so Bard hits Smog, and this is when Bard's son comes up from the tower with the black arrow, and of course Smog destroys the top of the tower because like you should have done that to begin with, sir. But that's okay. So now Smog is taunting Bard as the city burns. and you can see like all the fire behind them and everything, and you're like, dude, really, dude? So, while he's taunting, Bard has this moment of using his son's shoulder to launch the arrow and kill Smaug. Again, these like 25 minutes could have been the end of the Desolation of Smaug. I'm just saying, 'cause this part made no sense to me when I was like watching the movie, and I was like, I thought we were gonna have a battle now.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so the dwarves are back on the mountain, and they see that Smaug is dead, and Thorin obviously sees Smaug is dead, and then the people in boats are all wandering around, looking for their loved ones when they reach the city, where the Lonely Mountain is, and this is when Tariel and Legolas leave. Um this is when they're like on the boat, and Tariel has a moment with the elf Killy. Again, these characters were not fleshed out in my opinion. Like, I could not catch their names. I even had the closed captioning on, and I still couldn't catch their names. So um now the mayor's lackey, this like grimy dude. Who's that? What was that? That was a cat. That was a cat.
Mm-hmm.
So now the mayor's lackey makes Bard king, and Bard is like, no. And of course the crowd um starts to attack the lackey, as they fucking should,
Dude.
because he was a douchebag. And they follow Bard to try to find shelter in the city. Um, I'm surprised this dude. I later find out the like lackey, grimy dude that was with the mayor. His name is Alfred, by the way. He's a fucking douchebag. Like, come on, even Brad Dourif as Grandma Wormtongue was way better than this character. I'm just saying. Anyway, so back to the dwarves. They enter the Lonely Mountain. And Bilbo tells the dwarves to be careful now and to find the Arkenstone and the gold. Because he's still after the stone, Thorin. Um, and of course, Thorin is ready to take over the gold. Sorry, excuse me. So now we're back to Killy and the other dwarves. They make it to the Lonely Mountain. And they're still looking for the Arkenstone, which Bilbo has had this whole time. Um, Bilbo is trying to make a sneak, by the way, to take this back to the elves. Uh, to make a deal with them to call off this war. But anyways, now we go back to the displaced people of the city, who are working to rebuild their lives. And of course, Alfred the lackey is put to work, which he doesn't like. Legolas, Orlando Bloom. This is a scene where Legolas and Bard, Orlando Bloom and Luke Evans, like are on the screen together side by side in their facial profile, and they like legitimately look like they are related.
Yeah.
And now the white orc Azog comes with the army to start a war for the gold at the Lonely Mountain, because I guess that's where they were from. And now we have Lady Galadriel arrive to. I guess he was still fighting with the necromancer at the other location, and Galadriel comes to help fight the orc. And the spirits close in, and they try to intimidate Galadriel. And my girl Elrond rides in along with Saruman, and Radagast arrives and takes Gandalf away. And there was I wasn't sure exactly what the dialogue here was, or what the actual point of this part was. Because that's like the last time we get to see Galadriel and Elrond and everybody together. So the necromancer is also here, and Galadriel watches the necromancer start the Eye of Sauron, and of course he is banished by Galadriel and Saruman, who you later know is like the dark wizard. At this point, Elrond and Galadriel, of course, the Sauron's eye reappear and start laying the groundwork, obviously, for the Lord of the Rings. Now Radagast drops Gandalf off in the forest, and Radagast gives Gandalf his staff. So then, did that car leave? Is he still there?
No, they left.
Okay, because I'd be like, I'll fuck them up.
Because it was a pick 'em up truck, and I don't know whose pick 'em up truck that was. I was like, if it ain't my car, I don't know who the fuck it is. The
I
only two
know.
that are allowed to park here are the people across from us or Mr. Miguel. That's it.
I don't like any of these people. I'm just saying. All right, so back to the Lonely Mountain. Thorin is still looking for the Arkan Stone. And of course, Bilbo's surprised at how Thorin is acting because, surprise, surprise, you know how we get when we got a little money in our pocket. You know, we gotta be clouded, be like, hey, you know.
Facts.
We gotta be like, who? Deke? Don't know that girl, right? I'm just kidding.
Wait, Harley? Nope, never. I don't even own a Harley.
You're like, nope, never met that person in my life. So now now we're going back because we're jumping around a lot here. So now we're going back to the mountain, and the elder elf is explaining to Bilbo that Thorin is going mad over the crown because now he got the crown because he's the king of the Lonely Mountain and the stone, and he's going to leave them lost. His exact words, wasn't sure what that meant, by the way. So Bilbo decides to go and see Thorin.
Wait, I might be able to explain it. Say it again.
So this is the part where the elder elf is explaining to Bilbo that Thorin is going mad over the crown and the stone, and that he's going to leave them lost.
Basically, that means that he's not going to lead them in the right direction. That basically means that he's gonna lead them astray. Like you've heard that saying, "Oh, he's gonna lead you astray." That's what that means.
Pretty much. So Thorin now lunges at Bilbo, and Thorin is told that the townspeople are arriving, which he doesn't like. So Thorin orders the dwarves to close the gates. So now Bard looks out on the elven army who is surrounding the mountain just as Thandril arrives. Thandril, by the way, is riding a large moose. Because apparently we have mooses in this world. Just like we randomly have eagles and elephants.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So Thandril arrives. He's bringing food and medicine to the people because obviously they're sick. And now we go back to the mountain where Thorin is looking over all of his gems. Then we have a moment where we jump back to Thandril, who says to Bard that they're going to war and over his diamonds, over his gems, because apparently, I don't know. I guess that's how things are. Whatever. So Bard goes to the mountain to speak to Thorin, and when Bard gets to there, he's trying to speak to Thorin to share their treasure and like, hey, reminding Thorin that his people helped them when they needed help because they did, and Thorin is refusing to honor their deal, and of course the dwarves are sitting there like watching, like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? We didn't agree to that. So Bilbo goes to Thorin and asks like what he's doing. Thorin says not to underestimate the dwarves, and so now this is pissed off Bard, and he meets Thandril and says that the dwarves will not give them what they want. And so the dwarves are now choosing war, and they're all getting ready to fight because that's how shit goes. And just as Bard is preparing the townspeople to go for war, and then we go back to watching the dwarves prepare for their war. They were so hilarious. Like they were doing this little bit. Thorin gives Bilbo Mithril, which Bilbo says he looks funny because it's like so big on him. But I was like, Lord of the Rings callback, I love it. And then so now we go back to Thandro, who accuses the other dwarves of taking the Arkenstone, which they do have. And now we're back with Tariel and Legolas, who arrived at the Lonely Mountain, and Legolas says his mother died there. And he has a line where it says, "There's no grave, there's no memory," which I did like. And then we skip into Gandalf rides into the city and immediately meets Bard, who brings him to see Thandril. And Gandalf explains how the city could fall. And basically, in this scene, he's also talking about how they've seen the evil that's coming and they already know what's going to happen, but nobody has said anything to like grab this ring really quick from Bilbo and like toss it. You know what I'm saying? I don't understand that.
Yeah, which leads to a plot point that I wanted to point out, but it's not in this movie, so I'll wait. I'll hold my peace
Do
until
it
that.
now.
Okay, so this is the lead in to a scene in Lord of the Rings that kind of puzzles me because if Gandalf already knows that he has the ring, why in Lord of the Rings when he's sitting there he doesn't realize that that's the ring? Because when he leaves it for Frodo, when Bilbo leaves it for Frodo in Lord of the Rings, Gandalf is sitting there like unaware that that's the actual ring until he reads the transcripts.
I think he knows it's the ring, but he's not fully convinced it's the ring, but he has an inkling. So now we go back to the White Orc, who gives the orders at the mountain. And Legolas tells Toriel that the animals they're seeing are bats and they're only bred for war, which I don't remember seeing them in the war, actually, now that I think about it. So now we go back to Bilbo, and he's hiding in the shadows. The dwarves say that he should be inside. Bilbo tells the dwarves he will see him in the morning because he's making a break for it. He's trying to save everyone's life.
Yep.
So Bilbo makes a break for it. And then we jump back to Thandril, who readies the elves for battle against Gandalf's orders because nobody listens to Gandalf. And Gandalf warns Bard and then Ren, who just happens to run into Bilbo, because like funny meeting you here, sir, right?
Right.
Who takes Thandril, the Arkenstone, and says, and says upon its return, he hopes for no more war. But you know, the girlies are still gonna fight, cause you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, Gandalf tells Bilbo that they will leave the next day, and then Gandalf directs the weasel Alfred to find Bilbo a bed and let him know if he tries to leave, which obviously, because Snitch is gonna snitch.
And snitches get stitches up in her. Hold on, y'all. I'm gonna turn the fan on because it's hot as balls in here. So give me a sec. Yeah,
Okay.
continue. I'm just gonna turn the fan on really quick.
Go. Okay, so Thandril now and Bard are rolling up to the Lonely Mountain like a G. I swear I wrote that because that made me laugh. And the elves are also with them and ready for battle. Thandril tells them that they have to so Thandril tells the elves that they have the Arkenstone, and Bard begs for them to honor his word. So now Bilbo steps forward and says that he gave them the Arkenstone. He tells the dwarves, he tells Thorin that he gave them the Arkenstone. And he orders Bilbo to be thrown from the raptors. And of course, now my girl Gandalf comes and says to let Bilbo go to him. So they let Bilbo go to Gandalf. And then Thandril tells Bard to keep the stone. He will get a good price for it, which like that was kind of a fucking G thing to do. Like I was like, oh. He's like, keep it. You'll get a good price for it. Like, stop, right? And now Thandril says Thorin's oath means nothing because it doesn't. Cause he's like, whatever. So now the dwarf army pulls up like, okay, bet. And Bilbo asks, who is the dwarves approaching? Gandalf tells him it's Dane. Dane tells Gandalf to order the elves to leave, and Dane, of course, insults Thandril. But, like, this is the start of the battle, and they have some epic battle scenes here that I'll describe in a minute. So, Thandril goes up to Dane, who unleashes hell, but the elves are like, fuck around and find out.
And can I just say that a lot of the dialogue between the dwarves and the elves, fucking hilarious.
For sure. And so now, and then we have these creepy worms that pop out for like a second and then they disappear because I don't remember seeing them after that. And now the white orc has gathered his army and he's like, okay, we're all going to show up to the fight just because we can.
Yep.
So now the elves and the dwarves are all fighting. There's this one point where the orcs start coming down the mountain, right? And the elves and the dwarves are together. And they're headed straight for the dwarves. And the dwarves gather in front of the elves and they like put up their shield, right? And so then the elves start leaping over these dwarves and it's fucking amazing. It's like oh my god, you have to see it. It was so amazing.
It's almost kind of like what Aragorn did with the Uruk-hai in the Battle of Helm's Deep.
Yeah. And then so the white orc now releases the rest of the army. And so we go back and now Legolas and Toriel ride up on the side of the mountain and the kids join, and now the kids that were in there also join the fight. So Bard goes back to his city to find out where his kids are, to get them to safety. And Gandalf and Bilbo are now fighting the orcs as well. And then they have a moment with Bard, who are on this wagon going downhill to try to kill the orcs who have entered the city. Because the orcs are trying to go after Bard's kids. And I was like, the women and children, and he tells Alfred to lock all the women and children in the Great Hall because, like, I'm sorry, dude, like, I'm fighting because, like, get the fuck off my property, okay?
Exactly.
And now Thandril rides his sleigh up to the side of the mountain just as the orcs shoot his arrow and they, like, kill his moose. And he, like, falls over the moose and he has to start fighting for real now. I was like, girl, get up and start fighting. And then Dane, the dwarf guy, calls for Thorin, who's still inside the castle on his throne, just sitting there, like, holding on like he's in Hairspray. And this is, like, the last, the like, roach dance or something. And the other dwarves are, like, trying to appeal to his better side. Like, hey.
By the way, the Hairspray episode's coming soon.
They're like, hey, we gotta go. Like, we gotta get out there because, like, they're fighting because of us.
Yeah.
Thorin's having flashbacks of everything he's done. Like,
and he's like, wait, who's fighting? Not this one.
Exactly. He's like, who's fighting? Not me. So Kelly gets angry at Thorin for letting everyone fight for them, and Thorin asks the rest of the dwarves to fight and follow him one last time. I was like, bet, y'all should have been fighting to begin with.
This was y'all shit to begin with.
So Thorin blows his, like, shell horn, and the dwarves charge into battle with Dane and the dwarf army. And now we go back to the main city where Bard gathers the men to assist in the Battle of the Five Armies. And Bard runs into the battle to, of course, save everyone and be the hero, whatever. Now, this is where the women of the camp are like, okay, let's go. They decide to go into battle. They find and then this is where we find the grimy dude Alfred dressed as a woman trying to escape. And to get rid of him, he goes and hides in this trebuchet and gets thrown straight into Smaug's mouth. Or straight into one of the dragon or monster's mouth or whatever. I think it was an orc or something. And I was like, okay, bye, finally.
Sucks to suck.
And then now the dwarves are fighting on the ice. And this part's fucking amazing because, they're on a frozen lake and it's on. So now we go back to Gandalf and he's facing one of the giants. And for some reason he can't use the power of his staff. And then we go back to Legolas, who comes to help Gandalf, along with Tauriel. And Legolas tells Gandalf a second army of orcs is in the northwest, and he needs to warn everyone. Of course,
and I got a question. I have a question on this part. So, if Legolas knows Gandalf, how come in Fellowship they played it like he didn't know him?
Oh, he knew him. Everybody knew him. He already knew Gandalf.
Okay, because the way that it looks to me in Fellowship when they're meeting at the Council of Elrond, it seems to me because Legolas doesn't even really mention him he mentions Aragorn, and he mentions the hobbits, but it seemed to me like he didn't even know Gandalf.
He did know Gandalf. This proved it. Anyway, so Bilbo says he will go to warn the dwarves. And then Gandalf here has a moment where he says no. He won't allow it. And then Bilbo says he's not asking for permission. I'm like, girl, where has this spunk been this whole time? Okay?
Girl, you mean to tell me you could have done this the entire time and we had to sit through this whole damn thing? Go!
Exactly. So now we're back to the elves. Tauriel threatens Thandril, who does the same, and Legolas agrees to go with her. That part didn't make sense because I was like, I don't know about that. I guess we're still in the middle of the fight here. Bilbo arrives back to Thorin and tells him about the army that's coming. Thorin now sees the orcs. They're still fighting on the ice, by the way. Sees the orcs on the horizon, and one of them kills Killy's brother. And now they done pissed off Pickles or Thorin, by the way. So Killy goes after the orc who killed his brother, obviously, and Thorin has a great fight on the ice with the white orc Azog, and there's a particular moment where he thinks he's won the battle, and the white orc falls to the ice, and you can see him floating under the ice, and then he opens his eyes and just pops out of the ice. You're like, my God. So now Tauriel and Legolas have arrived, and Tauriel immediately goes to Killy, and the orcs have knocked out Bilbo. Legolas, exactly. Legolas has some great fight scenes here, where he's doing all these moves, but it looks like a video game as the mountain is tumbling down, and he's leaping up the rocks. Thorin again fighting on the ice is amazing. Now Tauriel calls for Killy. Tauriel is getting choked by the orc. Of course, Killy comes to her rescue, but now she's got to watch him die after being stabbed by the orc with this wooden stake. Womp womp. Right?
Thanks for playing.
You're thanks for playing. Tauriel takes the orc over the edge of the mountain to disarm him. And, of course, Legolas finishes the orc fight using his sword to kill him. And then the white orc again is waiting for Thorin as the orc army finally pulls up. And then this is the part where I just mentioned where Legolas has that cool video game moment. I mentioned that just a minute ago. You can rewind
1 out of
back to see it.
1,000, because like he was batting 1,000 throughout the entire movie.
Exactly. The white orc and Thorin go back and they have a moment. And then Radagast flies in with the eagles. And Thorin finally kills the white orc after he pops up out of the ice. You're like, oh my god, that took forever. And now the eagles that are flying around look so good, like so good. And so this is, guys, by the way, this is like the end of the movie. It's kind of winding down. You know, we get our like scenes and you're like, oh. So Bilbo goes to look after Thorin, who's obviously dying, which thanks for playing. So Thorin says goodbye to Bilbo, and Bilbo's distraught over his death. We get the boo-hoo, the cry, and now we go back to Tariel, who gives Killy back his stone, and then just as Thandril goes to find Legolas, they have this moment where Thandril is obviously Legolas's father, and he says that he wants him to find a ranger in the north. They call him Strider.
Bum bum bum.
Bum bum bum. Like, sir, what? Viggo Mortensen should have been in this movie. I digest.
Okay, but let's talk about Viggo Mortensen for a second. The reason he didn't want to come back for this movie, and you know what? Wholeheartedly give him credit. He's like, I don't need the fucking money. I'm good.
Yeah, Viggo Mortensen has never been like that. But anyways, back to the movie. This is the part that I was talking about that I remembered, where Tariel is begging Thandril to take the pain away from her, because she's distraught over Killy dying. This is where she asks him, why does it hurt so much? And he says, because it was real. I was like, ma'am, you just met this man like 2 movies ago. What are you talking about? This is real. I digest. So now we jump back to Gandalf. He takes out his pipe to smoke a fatty because fighting takes a lot out of you, and it's time to get your smoke on. And then now we go back to the dwarves. They're all gathered together to mourn Thorin, to mourn Killy, and all their dead. And Thorin is laid out with the Arkenstone while the dwarves keep watch. Bilbo, of course, pays his respects to Thorin and Killy and tells the dwarves to come back anytime they want to see him. Now this is the part that you were talking about, because now we cut to Bilbo is going home, and he's finding his house being auctioned off, and all of his possessions being auctioned off, and like the fucking nerve, okay? And then the
caucasity.
Like the hobbitacity, okay?
Or
like
my guy Cat Williams. The audacity of this prick.
And so the auctioneer asks for proof that Bilbo is alive, and he shows him the contract that he signed for the orcs. And he's like, well, I can't tell you what mission I was on, but I could just tell you I was there. And so they let Bilbo go back into his house, and he's cleaning his house, and of course he pulls out the ring. And then now you jump back to old Bilbo, and it's the beginning of Lord of the Rings, where there's a knock on the door, and he's like, "Go away!" And then Gandalf's like,
"Thank you. We don't want any
exactly.
Wait, we don't want any visitors, well-wishers, or distant relations. What about very old friends?"
Yeah, and then he opens the door, and you're like, "Oh, geez, I wonder what happens next. Let me go find the Lord of the Rings."
Yeah.
And that was the Battle of the Five Armies, and I am exhausted. These movies took so long, and
our producers here.
And I've been so busy and trying to get all this stuff done, and just didn't have the heart to finish it because I gotta say, rewatching these again, I was like, I don't really think I like these movies that much. What do you think, Deke?
Sorry.
Our executive
I mean,
producer, ladies and gentlemen, Atashi.
they're good movies. I'd rather just go straight into Lord of the Rings.
Same. I'm a Lord of the Rings girl through and through. I love Fellowship. I love the Two Towers. I love the Return of the King. I think the actors in that one are a little bit better. I know the storyline. I know the characters very well. I know a lot of that. Hey, and would I watch these movies again? I would watch them again, but I think I would have them on as background noise. What about you?
Same. And
All right,
for
go
ratings,
ahead.
well, if I could get a word in edgewise, for ratings, I'd give this one 3.5 out of 10.
I would give it. I would say the same. All right, so now it's time to talk about some of the characters in this film, like we normally do. So, what do you think? Who do you think was the best guest star in this movie?
That's easy. There's two. Orlando Bloom, number one, and number two, Ian McKellen. Even though I know he's technically one of the main cast, but technically he's a side character.
I mean, I think the best cameo in this film, obviously, is my girl Hugo Weaving as Elrond, because, like,
Oh, and of course we can't forget Christopher Lee, because Christopher Lee's in this
oh
movie.
yeah, and Christopher Lee again is in this movie. I think he was one of the best guest stars in this whole film. Like, he had the best lines. But I still go back to my Elrond anytime he's on screen as Elrond. Especially in the expanded scenes where we get to see a little bit more of Rivendell that we didn't get to see in the Lord of the Rings is always a great time. So was there any who do you think was the best villain in this film, and who do you think was the actual villain of this movie?
Again, I gotta go with Christopher Lee.
I got Christopher Lee, I think, was the best villain, but I actually think the villain of this movie is actually Thorin. Because, like, this whole army,
I can see that, yeah.
this whole battle would not have happened if he had honored the king and the deals that he made with Bard and everyone else that he had made, and he reneged on their deal. So technically, that makes him the villain.
Technically.
Who do you think was the GOAT of this movie?
Ooh. Okay, so it's a toss-up between three. Bilbo, number one. Gandalf, Legolas.
I wouldn't say they're goated. I mean, because like they're
Well,
like
mostly Gandalf is.
Well, I mean Gandalf, obviously, but I don't think he was the GOAT of this movie. I would say it's supposed to be Galadriel, but again, I think the actual GOAT of this movie has to be my girl Elrond, because like, why is she in this movie? Like, she's only in it for like 10 minutes, but she like radiates on the screen. She's giving me Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. She's giving me the Fellowship of the Ring. She's giving me fighting. Like, I love all of it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, last question. If you could be a character in this series or movie, who would you be and create a backstory?
My turn, a-holes. Okay, so to be honest with you, I think I would be a secondary character, because I think that in the entire saga of Lord of the Rings, they didn't need anybody else. I think it was perfect the way it was, including in the Hobbit movie, even though it's not one of my favorites, but I think it was fine the way it was, so I would probably be like a secondary character.
Yeah, I'd probably be one of the Rivendell elves with the long black hair and like just luxuriating, living my elven life. Don't need to really do much of anything, just chilling, relaxing, making jewelry, making friendship bracelets for when we go out to see Taylor Swift. But other than
Speaking
that,
of which, you still owe me a bracelet, by the way.
I gotta remake it. I gotta fix it for you. Other than that, that was the Battle of the Five Armies, Deke. I would rate this film probably like a 4.
I already said 3.5 out of 10.
Yeah, I can agree with that. All right, you guys. I think we're gonna go, and then we're gonna probably in like 20 minutes. We're gonna upload everything
Reconvene
and reconvene, and then we'll have 2 other episodes for you. So we'll see you then. Bye.
later.